Auxiliaries, maximizing the outputs of your console.
Auxiliaries are probably the most creative section of any console. They allow you to run mixes out of the console separate from the master fader mix. So for example, if you have 4 auxiliaries for every channel on your console, you can use the first auxiliary as a stage monitor for your vocalist. Now you can use the second auxiliary as a stage monitor for your guitar player. You can use a third auxiliary as a send into an effects unit like a reverb or a delay unit. Now you can use a fourth auxiliary as a send into a recording device like a cassette deck.
Aux sends on the console are actually just another output, just the same as your fader goes to the stereo mix output or to the subgroup outputs. Your auxes are just a rotary pot instead of a fader that comes over to another master pot, your aux master, and comes out the back. It's just the same thing, only individual control over another mix. That mix will typically be going to an effects unit, reverb unit, delay unit, or on-stage monitor mixes for the artists. So you can give artists 1 mix on stage, or 2 or 3, sometimes 4 mixes on stage is not uncommon at all.
So I have 6 auxiliary sends dedicated to monitors, and I also have a bass shaker that's run off an auxiliary. I also run my subs off an auxiliary, and then I have 2 for effects. So I have the monitors coming off the first 6, and they're at various locations around the stage so that we can service all the different musicians with the different needs.
First of all, depending on the console you're working on, the auxiliaries are usually located at the top or in the middle of the console. Now on the Mackie, they're located on the top just below the trims. Now along the top row of every channel is an auxiliary 1. Now all these auxiliary 1s run to an aux send master, which is located right here. The first thing you do is you turn up the aux send master to a desired level. Now let's assume the vocalist is coming down channel 20 and they would like to have their vocal in their monitor. The thing you need to do is go to auxiliary 1 on channel 20 and slowly turn up the pot until they have the desired level of vocal in their monitor. Now, the guitar player would like to have guitar in their monitor. What we need to do is first of all go and turn up the aux send master to the desired level. Now let's assume the guitar is coming down channel 19. The guitar player is on auxiliary 2. We find the auxiliary 2 on the channel 19 and slowly turn the pot until the guitar player is satisfied with the amount of guitar coming into his or her monitor. Now, let's assume that the vocalist would like to have guitar in their monitor. What we need to do is go to 19, which is the guitar channel, and slowly turn auxiliary 1 up until the vocalist is happy with the amount of guitar coming into their monitor. And the guitar player would like to have vocal in their monitor. What you need to do is go to channel 20, which is the vocal channel. Slowly turn up auxiliary 2 until the guitar player is happy with the amount of vocal in their monitor. Almost all consoles have pre-fade and post-fade auxiliaries. Pre-fade stands for before the fader. Post-fade, obviously, after the fader. Now the examples that we're using these pre-faders in is on our auxiliary sends to the monitors. Now this allows us to make changes to the front of house with our channel faders without changing the mix to the monitors. I need to make a point here. If you're going to adjust your trim or your gain for the channel, you're also going to change the mix going down to the monitors. This is why it's important to set your gain structure at the beginning of the mix instead of now. In our example, we used auxiliary 3 for our effects unit send. This is typically run post-fade. The reason for this is we want the output from the auxiliary 3 to follow any adjustments we make on the associated channel fader.
Typically on most consoles you have a couple auxiliary sends, or aux sends for short. And those aux sends are normally used for sending a signal to a reverb or a delay or whatever, but one of their practical uses is for monitor mixing when you don't have a separate monitor console. And a very frustrating thing for musicians is when those monitor mixes change during a performance or from performance to performance. So what you as a PA operator are trying to do is give them consistent monitoring, song to song or night to night or venue to venue. A common mistake is for people to set up those aux sends, and when they move the fader, all of a sudden the level of the monitor changes. And so on a lot of consoles you have what's called a pre or post fader switch, which simply means that the signal that feeds the auxiliary send section is taken before the fader or after the fader. Now, in order to keep those mixes from not varying, you want to insert the pre-fader and take the signal before the fader, so that when you move the fader and adjust the front of house sound, the guy's monitor mixes don't change.
In the monitor, if you're using them for monitors, you typically want them pre-fade, because you don't want, if you change the mix in the house, you don't want the mix on stage changing. The artists have to have something stable. They don't want it changing when they're trying to, singing and working. But the worst thing you can possibly do to an artist is change their monitor mix on them.
We've shown you a few examples about how to use auxiliaries. Now I know if you use them correctly, they will become a very powerful tool in your mix. In reviewing this section, an auxiliary allows you to have separate mixes coming out of the console that are usually dedicated for monitor sends or effect sends. For all the auxiliaries on the channels, there will be a matching auxiliary master output. Remember that auxiliaries run either pre-fade or post-fade. Pre-fade stands for before the channel fader, and post-fade stands for after the channel fader. Find out which auxiliaries on your console are pre-fade and which ones are post-fade. Use the pre-fader auxiliary sends for the monitors so that when you adjust the channel faders, the level in the monitors does not change. Use the post-fader aux sends for effects units. This way the amount of effect on the vocal stays the same when you adjust the channel faders.
I think it's really important that the engineer and the soundboard are placed in a location that they can hear properly the main speakers, get a good perspective of what the audience is hearing. So often the soundboard is stuck in a corner or up in a balcony because of aesthetics or because there's just no room in the building. If that happens, and it can happen, then I think the sound man's got to get up, or the sound person's got to get up and move around. They got to walk around and be in some of the positions that you're going to find your audience.
Experimenting and going in there and playing around is invaluable, and it's just an experience thing, and you need to take time, listen, play lots of stuff through the system.
The most common mistake I see anywhere in the whole audio business, I think, is people not listening. People mixing with their eyes, looking at where things are, looking at where knobs are set, looking at the curve on the EQ. If I'm mixing, I don't care if I have to turn every knob on the board all the way from one end to the other. I'll do it. Just keep turning it until it sounds right. It doesn't matter where the knobs are set.
I think the best advice that I could give for somebody starting out is, other than use your ears. That's the most important tool that you've got. You're going to learn lots of stuff about EQ and mic technique and all those things, but do what sounds the best. And sometimes that's doing nothing. And if you're constantly twiddling and fiddling and whatever, you're going to freak the band out and freak yourself out. You're going to second guess yourself, all those kind of things. And I think too that to remain with a teachable spirit, so that you're always willing to learn. No matter how much you know, there's going to be guys that can teach you tricks or tips, or remain open, read lots of stuff, listen really well, go to other live shows, hear what other front of house guys are doing. Just generally get as much experience as you can.
We've been talking about gain structure, subgrouping and panning, equalization, and auxiliaries. If you're new to the audio field, no doubt some of this information is a little overwhelming. Review the section and practice. Like anything else, practice makes perfect. I want to make another point here. Too many times I've seen audio engineers frantically running around trying to set up a mix. Slow down and do one function at a time. Your mix is going to sound better as a result. Remember, our job as an engineer is to listen. The audience doesn't care how much we know about the mixer and its functions. They came to hear the performer. There's nothing more satisfying as an engineer than to know you've made a great sounding mix.
Sound Simple is committed to your understanding of the audio world. Check us out on the web at www.soundsimple.com, where you can get interactive by posting questions or searching for answers. Sound Simple, instructional audio for your future.